Be working on textbook section 7.2, multiplying and dividing radical expressions. So if you have something like this, you can bring them together and multiply them. And if you want, you can rewrite them, because there's nothing that can be simplified separately. So this becomes the cube root of 125, and the cube root of 125 is 5. Because 5 times 5 times 5 equals 125. Okay, this one, you have choices as to which way you want to go with this. You can multiply the whole thing together. Or you could look at the 24 and say, I can separate that into negative 8 times the cube root of 3. Because negative 8 is a perfect cube. So, not forgetting this, but I can then make this, the cube root of negative 8 is negative 2, and I have the cube root of 9 and the cube root of 3, multiply those together, and that becomes 27, and then I can also pull out a 3, so that would be negative 2 times 3, and that final answer is negative 6. Okay, simplifying, and in this case you're assuming all variables are positive, so you do not have to worry about absolute value. So here you would look for the perfect square, which would be 100. So you can break this up. You can completely break this up if you want. And so then you're going to have 10, and the square root of 2 stays underneath. With the 6, you're going to go 2 goes into 6 3 times, so you can pull out a cube. And then with the 7, you can go 2 goes into 7 3 times with 1 left over. So that would stay underneath the radical sign, and that would be your final answer. Okay, with this one, you may want to break this up into a perfect cube root, which would be negative 125 times 2 would make 250, and then the cube root of x to the 6th and the cube root of y to the 5th. So this becomes negative 5. This stays under the radical sign. We'll move that over there. Then 3 goes into 6 2 times, and 3 goes into 5 1 time with 2 left over, so that would be your final answer for that one. Okay, with these, you're doing the same idea. You try to multiply them, and it's a square root. So before I work with all this, I'm going to bring the x's and y's together, but this can be broken up into 7 times 6, which would help me with the square root of 7. So I would have square root of 7. I'm going to bring my x's together. So let's put the 42 here, and x to the 6th, y to the 9th. Then I can break up this 42. I can go the square root of 7 times 7 times 6. And this is your 42. And then your x to the 6th, y to the 9th. Well, I now have 7 times 7, which means I can pull out a group of 7, 6 stays inside, underneath the radical sign. Okay, then you go 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 9 4 times with 1 left over. So that's your answer there. Okay, with this one, I'm bringing some things together, I guess, because you really don't have much to factor out yet. So it's 3 times 2 is 6. That's 2 is on the outside, and then underneath the radical sign you have 5 goes into 5 times 5 is 250, and then you add the exponents 3 and 4, and that's y to the 7th. Well, this can be broken down into a perfect cube, 125, and then the cube root of 2, and then the cube root of y to the 7th. So this becomes 6 times 5, that's a 5. Cube root of 2 stays inside. 3 goes into 7 2 times with 1 left over. So that would be your final answer there. Okay, so we've got a bit more to go. Okay, so this is number 25 where you're dividing. So one of the first things you can do is bring everything under the same radical sign. And then you're dividing, that becomes 8. And then you're subtracting exponents. And this is what is the result so far. And then the square root of 8 would be, you'd have to split this up into 4 and the square root of 2. So this will become 2. That would go there. 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 4 2 times. And then you would have to have the square root of 2 left over. Okay, with this one you're also dividing, so you can bring it under one cube root radical sign, and then start simplifying inside. This becomes 125, and then you're subtracting exponents. So when you do that, this is what you end up with, x to the 5th y squared. And then the cube root of 125 is 5. 3 goes into x. 3 goes into 5 one time with 2 left over. And there's nothing that can go into the 3 squared, so you leave it. Okay, this is multiplication. You can multiply a square root times a square root. That would be a square root of 100. And then the square root of 2 times 7, please leave this plus in the middle here, and this will become 7 the square root of 2. And then when you simplify it, it becomes 10 plus 7 the square root of 2, and that's your final answer. Okay, this one you have whole numbers, so you can multiply them together. That's 3 times 5, that's 15. And then 3 times the square root of 21, put your plus sign there. And you're going 3 times the square root of 21. And this can't be simplified, so you leave that the way it is. Okay, with this you would bring everyone together unless there's something you can pull out easily, which you can't. But 3 times 9 is 27, which makes that a nice number. And let's see here. And then we add exponents. 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7. So then we can work with that, and the cube root of 27 is 3. 3 goes into 7 2 times with 1 left over. Make sure you're using the right index. Okay, with these kind of double square root over square root, you can treat it 2 different ways. You can do the square root of the inside first, if that works, and this one does work nicely, and then take the square root again. Or you can say that I have 2 and 2, and you are multiplying, not adding, the indices, and that becomes 4. So the 4th root of 16 is 2. 4 goes into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 4 again one time.